Why do we become so defensive, even in small matters, especially with the people that we love the most? So we're going to be answering that question today, but before we do, if you're looking for some clarity or direction on your situation, or just another brother to hold space for you while you allow your own revelations to come through, and you know what to do. Book a session with me, your old Uncle E, by clicking the link down below. So today we got a question from a viewer that goes, yo, Elliott, whenever I get into an argument with my wife, I immediately go into defense mode. Even if she has a valid point, I feel this overwhelming need to explain myself, prove I'm right, or point out what she did wrong. The conversation always turns into a fight, and afterwards I usually realize I wasn't really listening. I was just protecting myself. Why do I get so defensive, and how can I stop reacting that way so I can actually hear what the people I love have to say? Great question, man. And I'm gonna begin by addressing the defensive posture, because it's sort of baked into every single human being. And if you study psychology, one of the things that Freud brought to our attention was that every psychopathology is some defense mechanism, some defense against a perceived threat in our environment. And what Wilhelm Reich, his student, discovered was that not only were these psychological defense mechanisms psychological, but they were also physiological, meaning that it didn't just happen in the thought process, it also happened in the body. A defense against a threat happens in the body first. And interestingly enough, it stays in the body the longest. The mind is fleeting. An emotion or a thought may come and go. But what happens when things happen that create the trauma response in the body, which is a very unique thing. Maybe we should talk about that for a moment. So just to give some context about what I'm about to go into, we all have defense mechanisms, and these things are triggered by our environment, but it begins very early. And when those perceived threats, when we confront those perceived threats, there's a defense mechanism that not only happens mentally, but then gets baked into the body. And so we're talking about a body that's very malleable, a child's body. And that forming, that molding, those physical defense mechanisms that Wilhelm Reich called character structure begin even in utero. And the interesting thing is that based on the way of character structure, the understanding of character structure, which says that the body carries the personality. In other words, the form equals the function. The way your body's shaped, the way your body looks, the way you even breathe determines or is indicative of your psychological predisposition. So the body and the mind are together in this concept that I'm sharing with you here. And it begins very early and across a spectrum that happens from in utero to about age 4 or 5. The body is going through different developmental stages, and it's very malleable. And so whatever reactions or whatever trauma responses happen very acutely, like a big catastrophe, or like chronically stimulated, form different character structures across these 4 years. I know this is crazy, but if you hear me out and you want to do some research, look into the work of Wilhelm Reich, character structure, Alexander Lowen, bioenergetic analysis. I'm not making this stuff up. It's very fascinating, though sort of pseudoscience. But it's going to help you understand your predominant reaction to the things that people confront you with and why you become so defensive, how you become defensive, and what you can do as a result. So this will all make sense and it'll come full circle, and you'll be happy that you watched to the end. So just to get a sort of a basis understanding of the typical defense mechanism that you may be using that has also formed your character structure so that you respond or react unconsciously to threats in your environment as an adult. From in utero to about age 1, the what's being challenged more than anything is life. Like, will this life survive? Any threat to the organism in utero or within the first few months of life, really, is a threat to the existence of the organism. So things become an existential threat, right? Like if there's famine, if there's war, if your mother's depressed, the baby is so soft, the baby is so new to this world that the threat is upon its life. It's perceived as a threat upon its life. Even having a cold mother, maybe a mother that wasn't really tending to the child in utero, maybe she kind of just had to work and she just didn't pay attention to the fact that there was a baby in there. And then maybe when the baby came out, she was sort of annoyed because she had to go back to work or whatever the case may be. And now she's sort of like distant from the baby. Or maybe there's war, maybe there's famine, maybe there's bad things going on in the environment. Maybe she's an abused woman. Either way, the connection between the source of life, mother, and the baby is severed. And what this creates is the schizoid character structure. The schizoid character structure, just like the other three that I'm going to teach you, have a predominant defense mechanism that was baked in during those early ages that then will show itself later on in your marriage and in your career and with your children and with your friends in a repeatable way. You're going to use the same defense mechanism because it's been baked into your body when your wife is giving you a hard time. This is important because we all respond differently based on the character structure that was formed. After that phase, around age 1, age 2, the child really needs nurturing, needs love, needs attention, needs food from the mother's body. The mother literally it gives a continuous flow of life to the child in her warmth and in her milk. And that's why this phase is called the oral stage of development. And if you did not get what you need, maybe you had to cry it out in bed, maybe your parents were kind of like those fertilizers where they kind of like let the baby cry, push the baby away, put the baby in its own room, strap the baby into a trolley, and there's sort of a separation. And then on top of that, no physical nourishment from the mother because they're sticking a plastic bottle full of formula in the baby's gullet. That baby will wanting to reach out, but does not, that reaching out is not received, develops the oral character structure with a particular defense mechanism that will repeat itself throughout your entire life, as we'll see in a moment. And then the third forms around potty training. This is all about autonomy. So at this age, the child actually knows how to say no, but that no is often thwarted by the power of the parent. This is usually around potty training, like I said, and it's a matter of like autonomy over the body's natural functions. I gotta poop, no. Last time you pooped your pants and you had to come home from school and I was embarrassed and you better not poop. So then there becomes a clenching, a tightening in the anus and in the bowel area, right? Because it's, right? You gotta bear down and do what mom told you. Or food, you better eat your peas, better eat your broccoli, right? And so it's being shoved into the mouth. So this stage is often associated with the alimentary canal. Autonomy over what you eat, autonomy over what you physically do. But also helicopter moms that like never let the kid do anything that's sort of dangerous. Every time the kid like tries to reach out and do something, he's drawn right back. This creates the masochist character structure, and then finally the fourth of the character structures, and then we'll get to how each of these has a predominant reaction to threats and how you can release them in a minute. So the fourth character structure is the character structure of the young man or woman who was built up by the parent of the opposite sex. We see this in like son husbands, right? Like where the parents divorce, the boy lives with the mom, and the mom speaks poorly about the dad, says you should never become a man like that. And the boy takes on this responsibility of becoming mom's hero. Mom builds you up to be, you're gonna be my new special hero, you're gonna be successful in the world, you're never gonna be like your dad, right? Or with girls often where the dad builds the girl up to be like a boy, right? No boy's ever gonna take advantage of you. You're a strong and independent woman. You don't need to do anything. And he puts her in like MMA, right? These develop the psychopath character structure. Okay? So this is the spectrum now. And we all, as long as you have a physical body, you have an ego. The body is the soul in many ways. This is Catholic theology, that when we die, we get a light body that is the imprint or the blueprint of our actual body, and you will receive it back in its perfect form. In other words, the body and the soul, your soul looks like your body. This is the idea of character structure, and this is why it's so important. If you want to affect the soul, if you want to affect the mind, you want to affect the emotions, we go to the body. Because concept all day, ideals all day, thinking about it all day does not change the structure. And remember, form equals function. So if you want to know thyself is the law of the land. Like, know thyself is super important. You got to know yourself so that when you go into these circumstances, you know your predominant reaction and the way that you're going to act and why you act that way based on your character structure. Mouthful. But if you want to know more about this, read the books I told you, or hire me for a guidance session. I can do character structure on you. And if you want to work deeper with me on bioenergetics to break yourself free from the physical limitations of your character structure, we can discuss that on a call also. So here's what each of these 4 character structures will most likely do when in a perceived threat situation decades later, when they're an adult and they're married, they have children, they have a job, and things that they're going to have to confront daily. But there are latent reactions that will really throw you off your life's path, if not acknowledged. So let's walk through what the reaction would look like. First, for the schizoid. If you find that you get into heated conversations, arguments with your wife or your significant other or whatever the case may be, and your tendency is to withdraw, meaning I feel something in my body I don't like right now, I'm escaping, I'm getting out of here. Meaning you may be in the argument with your wife and it starts to get a little bit heated, and your response, the reaction is always first in the body. The response is what you do to the reaction in the body. So there's some feeling in the body. As imperceptible as it may be, there's some movement in the body. That's the first reaction for everyone. If you have a tendency to check out during an argument, you look at your phone, or you walk away, or you just stop hearing, right? One of my daughters had a tendency to do this when she was young. She would literally just like go limp. Like, we're having a conversation, I'm trying to explain things to her, and of course I'm aggressive, I'm a psychopath. And I'm coming in hard, and I'm trying to solve the problem, and she would just like, the eyes would go like this. Right? Eyes would just go across, or this way, and she was just like just turning catatonic. Her reaction caused her to be catatonic in that moment. My daughter is a little bit schizoid on this first end of the spectrum. How did that happen? I don't know. That's why it's a pseudoscience. It may be from generations of trauma and wounding that show up in our bodies, right? You may not actually be carrying the pain from your life. You could be carrying your mother's pain, or your grandmother's pain, or your great-great-grandmother's pain. So whatever it is, I don't know why my daughter is a little bit schizoid, a little bit oral, but I recognize that her reaction to heated debates and arguments was to check out completely. Comment down below if that's you. Just put a number 1 or the word schiz, S-C-H-I-Z, which means separate. Schism, schizoid means separate. You literally separate your thought world from your feeling world because it's just too much of an existential threat to experience the pain in the body. It feels like you're going to die. So rather than sitting in that pain and letting it threaten your cohesiveness, you disappear, you check out, you go away. Number 2, if you have a tendency in these heated arguments to reach out more, meaning you can't stand the idea of someone not liking you. You can't stand the idea of someone rejecting you. You can't stand the idea of somebody having something bad to say about you, or somebody having something against you. So you reach out more. You pull that person towards you. You do more things. You say more things. You try to pacify that person just to get them, just anything to like me again. Please, just like me again. What do I have to do? Sometimes even if I have to lie to myself, if I have to lie to you, I'm going to do what I have to do in order to get you to like me again. These people cling. Where the schizoid checks out, the oral clings harder. This is latent trauma reaction to not getting what you needed, nourishing-wise, warmth-wise, from your mother when you were during the oral stage of development. So once again, the reaction is in the body. You feel a threat. There's a threat in the body. I'm going to talk about that, the initial reaction first in a moment. But the response, your response out of fear is, and these are all out of fear, but your fear, what you do is you reach out. The third, which is the masochist. So the second was oral. The third is masochist. The masochist hunkers down. If they're getting into an argument, if something's not going really well between the two of you, and you go, I'm going to shut up, but not just shut up and check out like the schizoid. You shut up, but you hold it in. And it just boils. And it boils. And you hold it in, and it actually starts making you sick. These are people that generally have internal organ problems, right? Later on, digestive problems, because you're holding the stress in your torso. They hold, because it's associated with the alimentary canal, the cutoff is here, but also down here, right? So you could just imagine that if you're cut off from releasing expression here, right? Because what happens when your mom says, you gotta eat it, you gotta eat the peas, you go. Or when your mom says, stop shitting your pants, you go, all right? So you squeeze in and you hold in, and that pressure sickens you. But it also colors what a trained eye sees of you. It's oftentimes very subtle. I do this because it's very overt, right? But it'll often happen in like the flick of an eye, right? Or of the mouth, or a settling down, right? Like almost like they're hunkering down, right? I see this in my masochist friends. Masochists and psychopaths, all of them are very obvious when you start seeing them. But masochists are like, you can see them a mile away. I have a lot of masochists in me, so I know that. My mom's a masochist. My mom's got all types of internal problems. Because she bites her tongue and she bears down on it, right? The reaction to the perceived threat is internal, but the choice to make that move is external, though unconscious, because it was baked in so early. And then the fourth, the psychopath. The psychopath is the one where the parent seduced the boy up to being a hero. Most of our politicians are psychopaths. They were groomed to be kings, to be leaders, right? To be the champion for everyone. And what this person tends to do is try to fix the problem right away. A lot of these guys become like wife beaters, right? They're not gonna check out because they're here. They're not gonna hold on and reach because they're not weak and needy. They're not going to buckle down because nothing gets done when you're stuck. They're gonna go and try to fix it. They're gonna go and try to fix it, not even think too much out of it. It usually just comes right out. They're usually very charismatic, speak a lot, and they're very magnetic, but at the same time, carry a burden that doesn't belong to them and burns them the fuck out. In the actual argument, they will shout. They will fight. They'll get in your face. And like I said, they have a tendency to become very aggressive. So if you see yourself in any one of those three, recognize how you're doing it when you find yourself in these argumentative situations. Know yourself, because when you know yourself, you can help yourself do the second part of a framework that I'm going to share with you right now. Right? Because this is all very fascinating. Everybody wants to know a little bit about themselves, but Elliott, what do I do about this? What do I do about this? Like I had been saying across the spectrum, no matter what character structure you are, there's always an initial movement in the body that needs to be perceived, because that's the spark that sets you down the domino effect of possibly ruining your life because you're totally out of control of the unconscious things you're doing. So the very first thing is you got to bring what's unconscious to conscious light, and that the body is the unconscious. The unconscious, and I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it's an unconscious intelligence. It's not conscious of itself. Your heart beating itself is not conscious of itself. Your digestive system doing the alimentary canal thing, peristalsis, your hair growing is not aware of itself. Your nails growing, right? All these things that are happening normally and naturally without consciousness in your body, that's the intelligence of the bodily unconscious. And it does not forget. It is the older part of your brain, meaning it will remember old shit. It will remember old shit from previous generations. That's why genetics is a thing, right? If it wasn't so old, genetics wouldn't be creeping its way back into like today, right? You ever see pictures of like your child, but then like your mom comes, is like, here's your great great grandmother, and you look at the child and you look at the grandmother, you're like, what the hell? They're the same kid. So there's an unconscious intelligence that you have no control, you have no awareness of. But that's where the trauma goes. If it's not handled, if it's not acknowledged, if it's not perceived and dealt with appropriately, then you'll carry it your entire life and you probably pass it on to your kids. I mean, we call it genetics, but it's nature and nurture, a little bit of both. So in all four cases, the very first thing you got to do when you even perceive the pregame of an argument brewing, notice what's happening in your body. No judgment, no analysis, just noticing. Boy, I noticed that for me, I notice almost like a fire rising in my chest. My belly gets tight, and this gets very clenched up because it's like I want to shout out, I want to discharge the energy that is right in my inner tube. Right? That's what I notice right away. I also notice sometimes my anus, because I'm partly masochist, I got a lot of masochists, my anus will cinch up. I'll become a tight ass, right? My butt puckers up. The minute I start perceiving a threat, my butt tuckers up. Why is that? Well, it doesn't really matter. There's no analysis. There's just notice. You might notice that your shoulders go up. You might notice that your breath shortens. I mean, in all of our cases, the breath becomes more shallow. You might notice that your jaw tightens, right? You might notice like your eyes start doing weird stuff, right? The argument is beginning and then your eyes start doing shit. What are my eyes doing? I noticed with one of my former business partners, the minute like the conversation started getting uncomfortable, he would do this. He would yawn. I'm like, this is not a fucking time to yawn. This is not a yawning time. Who's tired? We're having a real conversation here. You're yawning, but I knew it was because that was his defense mechanism. That was something totally unconscious that he was doing in order to avoid the pain of what was ensuing. But I'm watching it. I'm watching people. I judge books by their cover. That's what character structure teaches you. How to look at someone and know a whole lot about what's going on inside that person beyond what you see, right? What most people see anyway. So the very first thing across the board is you got to recognize the first movement in the body and then release it. Have no thoughts about the conversation itself. Have no thoughts about what you're going to say. Have no thoughts about the other person. Focus 100% on what is happening inside your body and let it go. Before having any conversation, let it go. Once you've let it go, you've now allowed yourself the freedom to breathe. That's number 2. Let go of the physical tension. Don't get into the thought body yet. Let go of the physical tension and allow it to release and then breathe into it. It may be good to take a number of breaths, 3, 5, 10 breaths. Deep breaths, long exhales. Because what this does now is it settles your energy. It takes you out of the reactive posture. It takes you out of the character structure, the monster, the demon that's about to rise up in you and do that shit that you don't even want to do. Before any of that happens and it takes over you lose yourself in the argument, spot it. Let it go, breathe into it. It may be also helpful to become objective about why you're doing what you're doing, and that's why I gave you the character structure before. And you might want to remind yourself, and you might want to affirm a truth, and you might want to deny a lie that's associated with why you're the way you are. See, for me as a psychopath masochist, because there's a spectrum, I kind of teeter along here. As a psychopath masochist, I will often have a reaction and then respond. But if I think about why I'm doing the thing I'm doing, it's usually out of need for control, fear of losing it all, right? Not being understood. So you got to sort of like ask yourself, what is it that you're fearing right now? In that moment, feel it, release it, breathe it, and then we can analyze. That's why it's called bioenergetic analysis. It's got to be dealt with bioenergetically first and then analyze. What am I afraid of? Because most of the time, 90% of the time, the threat is not real. And if you really like probe yourself, or get on a guidance call with me so I can probe you to get down to what are you actually afraid of, it usually turns out to be bullshit. And when I say bullshit, I'm not negating the fact that the person feels this, but it's old shit. It doesn't exist. I'm afraid my wife's, if I continue to argue with my wife is going to leave me. Right? Now, you may not believe that here, but you believe it here because of the experience of maybe your parent leaving you when you were a kid, right? I know a lot of kids, including myself, I think back, like I have traumatic experiences with school. I remember my first day of kindergarten and crying my eyes out because I felt abandoned. I was like, where did my mom go? She dropped me off here with a bunch of these strangers. And I'm freaking out. I had a lot of trauma from kindergarten. I remember. One time my mom didn't come and pick me up on time, and I freaked out. I was crying. I went to my teacher. It was like I was gonna die. And of course, I was a little kid. It's not reasonable at all. But that very trauma will be re-triggered if I get into an argument with my wife. Oh, she's gonna leave me. There's no evidence that your wife is gonna leave you. There's no evidence that she's gonna want a divorce. There's no evidence that she's unhappy in your marriage. But because she's asking you to take the garbage out 3 times already and you haven't done it, you start getting worried. She might leave me, right? I'm just making up hypothetical situations. So you have to recognize the physiological response and then the mental bullshit. You gotta let the mental bullshit go. And then when it comes to the actual person, right? Look, we went from here to there. It always begins here. Am I gonna deal with because you'll watch YouTube videos, you'll scroll through like these Instagram reels, and they'll give you 5 points on like what to do when you're in an argument, how to neutralize a person, what to say. These are all fucking tactics. These are all tactics. I'm telling you how to change your operating system. Recognize the failure is in the operating system, not in the app, right? The application. The application is secondary to the operating system. So we're talking operating system shit. But one thing that's associated that may be helpful as a application is that when you find yourself in these situations, and this is an internal application as well as an outward, because I don't want you to fake this, but curiosity over correctness is always a better place. Curiosity meaning, okay, what am I actually not seeing that this person is asking me? Right? What am I not seeing? If I could step back and look at this conversation objectively, what's actually happening here? What is she actually worried about? What is she actually doing? And is she even conscious of what she's doing? You could step back and you can be the observer of the entire situation. Curiosity. So that's the internal aspect of curiosity, but the outward aspect of curiosity is simply to use this phrase. Interesting. Is that so? I'm not affirming, I'm not denying, I'm just acknowledging, I never thought that way. I probably never will. I don't really understand. That's interesting. How did you come up with that? Wow. And sometimes I don't ask any questions. I just marvel. Really? My kids will come with me all kinds of dumb shit sometimes, and an old version of me would react. Well, my kids are getting older now too, and I have to give them space to make their own mistakes, and I'll just be like, They'll come to me with an idea, or they come to me with something that they did, and I don't approve of it. And as I've gotten older, my wisdom has taught me to shut my mouth. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Because believing that my words, believing that I have some power to affect change only backfires. Because if I tell them what to do, you know what they do? They do what they want to do, and now they start lying to you. Right? They can do what they want to do anyway, and now they're going to start lying to you because of you, the way you are. But if you just stay curious, right? I know a lot of guys, now I'm starting to rant, but I know a lot of guys do this in order to find out like a woman's history, right? Like these guys, like you're very cautious about dating women these days because they might have a long list of riders, right? They rode a lot of horses. And one of the things that like they teach in dating, and I'm not in dating, but I pay attention because of you guys, is to don't judge, don't make any statements, don't assert any values, no morals, just be curious. That's interesting. What do you think about this girl who slept with 40 guys? And whatever her answer is, interesting. I don't know, I'm just asking you. You already got your judgment, right? But you stay open, and the other person stays open when you're curious rather than trying to be correct. So that's it, that's all, that's my advice on that, y'all. Hope that helps. Dudes, done.